Hello, guys and gals, and welcome to another episode of Unique Items. Today we're going to be taking a look at a fun one that I've been playing around with this season, which is the Charged Bolt Sorceress. I've always wanted to make a functioning Charged Bolt Sorceress, and while they kind of worked okay, they weren't really like the most amazing things in the world. But these days, with the enhancements to the Staff of Lam Esen, or the Staff of Liam Neeson, the Staff of Liam Neeson is pretty OP these days. As you can see, I currently have it masterworked 8 out of 12, but I do have a greater affix on the intelligence too, which rolled as high as 648, which is amazing. They also changed the passive on this one to 170% increase to lightning damage, which is also very nice. And they added on the huge percentage bonus. Like it's like 75% base, but it's currently up to 94.9% chance for charged bolts projectiles to cast twice, which is massive for this particular build. On top of this, we also have a huge resource cost reduction, which I actually hit the 25% bonus on. It actually starts at around 45%, but mine is currently at 69.7, which is kind of insane. And that does bring my charge ball really far down in the ranks. On top of this, we also have plus 9 to charge bolts here, which is just insane. It does roll, I think it's 6 for base, but as you can see, I hit that with the 25% bonus too. On top of this, it also has a special effect, which it kind of makes the item or charge bolts actually usable. So it's actually kind of weird to say this, but charge bolts kind of suck without this staff. And your cast of charge bolts have a 66% chance. It does roll from 40 to 80 chance to be attracted to enemies and lasts 300% longer. On top of this, we also have our flavor text, which is also known as the Great Staff of the Old Religion. This powerful relic is one of the only a small, what? I can't believe I messed that up so badly. Also known as the Great Staff of the Old Religion, this powerful relic is one of only a small handful of Skatsimi artifacts that have survived to this day, Barrett's Book of Implements. So this particular staff makes Charge Bolt viable. And you might be wondering what the hell I'm even talking about. Like, Charge Bolt, that sucks. Who uses Charge Bolt? Well, I've been using Charge Bolt all season, so... I'm pretty sure I was showing off something to somebody at some point. That's why I have my thing all messed up here. But let's have a quick look at what charge bolts look like before we put the Staff of Lam Esen on. So before we put the Staff of Lam Esen on, and of course we need something else in our hand just so we can cast. It doesn't really have the greatest look, and of course Tyrael's is stealing the show. It doesn't go very far, as you can see. It doesn't even cast that many, and on top of that, like if you're too far away, it won't even reach the target. And it's not going to track the target. It's not going to hit the target in any way. It's a very short range ability at best. And it just doesn't really work very well without it. On top of this, if you put the staff on, though, you'll notice that all of a sudden the item just kind of like the charge bolts just kind of come alive. Instead of only lasting for a small distance, now they start doing crazy things like turning around and going in the opposite direction and finding the monsters. Now, if there's no monsters nearby and you fire them off, they still just kind of travel off in the distance and they don't really do anything, but they do happen to last a little bit longer than they did before. And you will notice that they tend to find targets and attack them with the Staff of Lam Esen attached. Now, there's another aspect which is really important for this, and this is the one that's called the piercing static, which is charge bolts pierce but deal 50% times less damage to targets hit after the first strike. Now, if you take those gloves off, you'll notice that they don't really attack as many times as they did previously, so they're just kind of hit one target, and they're going to do damage to that one target, and then they're going to dissipate, which doesn't really make them very effective when dealing with large groups of monsters. However, with the aspect of the piercing static, it gets kind of crazy, and prepare yourself, because there's going to be a lot of explosions. Now, as you can clearly see here, there's a lot going on with charge bolts, and it does a lot of crazy things. It's quite honestly one of my most fun abilities this season. Is I really enjoy using the charge bolt staff. The charge bolts hit the target, they pierce through, they hit other targets. They do a little bit less damage, obviously, when they pierce through, but they tend to like just track down and hunt pretty much everything. On top of this, charge bolt also has an interesting effect that when you use it, of course, and it hits more than a certain number of targets, it will release a interesting like Nova, I guess. The third time an enemy is hit by a single cast of charged bolts, that charged bolt surges upon impact, dealing 105 to 129,000 damage, just like a little Nova. You can kind of see it happen when you hit a target. Like if they get hit by all the bolts, you actually see the Novas actually kind of come out of the monsters. You get all these little lightning Novas. They're a little less impressive than you would think, but you can obviously see them actually all happening. And of course, because the staff is making it seek the targets, these novas are happening more regularly, of course, because the frickin' you're getting hit by all the bolts. So you end up with tons and tons and tons of these lightning novas doing a pretty massive amounts of damage along the way. Um, Charge Bolt can also be thrown in as an enchantment too, but I don't have that, so I actually am using the Ball Lightning enchantment. And the reason why I'm using the Ball Lightning enchantment is because it's basically just critical strikes. So as I'm attacking, like this, what you'll notice is that we actually have these ball lightnings that are forming. You can't really quite see them because they're underneath the training dummies, but they're doing pretty massive amounts of damage too because I hit so often with the charged bolts. It's pretty nice. All in all, I think the Staff of Lam Esen is probably in the best place it's ever been in terms of damage output for charge bolts, and charge bolts is really, really fun now. I've been able to dish out some really significant damage with charge bolts, and also I think it's probably one of the most fun builds that I've played in the Infernal Horde so far because of the way that it tracks down monsters and hits multiple monsters. And you can pretty much just stand there holding down the charge bolt button as your charge bolts pretty much just seek targets on their own, which is just absolutely hilarious. And it just does massive amounts of damage. Now, the damage versus bosses is a little slow, and I am working on increasing the single target, obviously. In fact, the Sorceress always has issues with single target. But she's still capable of doing tier 5s and tier 6 Infernal Hordes without too much of an issue. As well as... God, it's so much fun to play this build. The Staff of Lam Esen, though, definitely an interesting one to find in a very, very good state. The interesting thing is that if you get the charged bolts as a greater affix, it doesn't really matter because you can only get 100% chance anyway. So it's always going to cap out when you masterwork at 12. On top of that, the resource cost reduction may not necessarily be what you want depending on what you're trying to set up. You might be working on things that require you to spend resource. And if that's the case, well, like reducing the resource cost too much might put you in a bad predicament. Like right now, it costs 27 mana, but when you throw on the staff, you can see it goes down to 8, and then when I start actually firing, because I have Ring of the Star of the Sky on, now I'm down to a mere 4 mana cost, which means that I can pretty much just keep this thing going forever and ever and ever and ever and ever. But the problem with this is there are things like, for instance, maybe the Chain Lightning, which you might be interested in, which Chain Lightning forms after spending 83 mana. Well, since I'm only spending 4 mana per charge bolt at this particular point, obviously it's going to take a very long time to hit the 83 mana that I need to hit to make the charge bolt activate, which is kind of a whole thing. It's definitely a fun one to play with, though, and honestly, that resource cost reduction itself is it's kind of insane, especially when you consider I'm not even fully masterworked. I might even be able to get that to the point where the charge bolts are basically completely free, which is kind of nuts if you really think about it. What else can we say about this beautiful thing? Because it is a staff, you do miss out on obviously an additional aspect, and that can be kind of an issue. As you can see, I do have a lot of uniques in this build right now, and I am very aspect starved. I'm currently using the Charge Bolts Pierce, and I'm also using the Tenacious Destruction for just the flat 60% multiplier for no defensive skills. I really don't need any defensive skills with this build. It's a very tanky build in general. Lightning builds generally are tanky because they have access to things like Veer's Mastery, You also get access to obviously the protection. Mana shield, I should probably take that out because I'm probably not getting that damage reduction now that I've hit like 4 mana on the charged bolts. It's probably pretty difficult to spend that much mana and actually grab the 20% damage reduction. Um, that's pretty much it. I do like the staff. I like the changes to the staff. The 1.50 version is a hell of a lot better. If you're looking to find this staff, it does actually drop specifically from Grigore and Beast in the Ice. Those are the two monsters that it drops from. So if you're doing like tormented bosses, you can maybe target Grigore or Beast in the Ice specifically. All the tormented bosses do have the same chances of dropping Uber uniques now. So farm the tormented bosses away. That was actually in the patch notes, by the way. If you doubt me, you can go take a look at the patch notes. It does actually say that there. And that way you can try and get yourself a greater affix version. I mean, the intelligence is massive, but you could also potentially get one with the greater affix charged bolts. And I mean, I don't even know if you got one with the greater affix resource reduction, you could pretty much just bring any of these skills down to 0. I mean, interesting. Anyway, as always, I do appreciate you guys and gals watching my videos, even when we're just talking about the staff of Liam Neeson. And as always, be sure to hit that like button and subscribe button if you enjoy the content. And keep watching.